Hello, and welcome to the Dove Dive, where I'm put onto musics and melodies from the deepest, darkest dungeons of your computer disk. I'm your host for this Dove Dive, Joe Dove, and this week we'll be talking about Loren Dixon's favorite, Brenda Kahn, and her particular album that we'll be listening to is Hunger. About the artist, Brenda Kahn! Alright, sorry. I'm always going to be a Star Trek fan, and every time I hear the name, Kahn, it's going to happen. I apologize. Anyway, Brenda Kahn is a punk-infused folk singer that often gets placed in the same breath as Jeff Buckley and Bob Dylan. It's interesting to note right away that the studio loved her style so much from their first album, Listen, that they signed her right away. She received critical acclaim, and they said, let's bring her on. That album, Goldfish Don't Talk Back, which is very true, received high praise from the critics. Her follow-up hit in '92 dabbed into Kahn's dark humor and gamut of life-reflected living in the '90s, from love to tragedy of the urban world. The label was a subsidiary of Columbia Records, and right before she got that big hit, they shuttered the doors and she had to sign under an independent label. Some of her career highlights include performing twice at Lilith Fair, starting her own record label called Rocket 99, and then being the founder of womenrock.com, an online music store to set up, gather, empower, and guide women artists on the passages in the music industry. She has a powerful voice. She has a huge understanding of what's needed to get into the music industry and survive, and she has taken that knowledge and shared it. She's a teacher of sorts, and she is a brilliant woman. This album was amazing, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. This incorporation, womenrock.com, is going through some changes, I noticed when I looked it up, and, that should be up pretty soon. Which brings me to some news. As Julian mixes episode 31, you've heard episode 30, this is the Dove Dive in between. I've got two great, amazing shares. On episode 32, we will have a special guest, the host and ghost with the most, Josh Sterling from the Amazing Haunting Season podcast. This amazing podcast is probably the best storytelling one out there, especially if you like ghouls and ghosts. This guy can perfectly place you in a state of unease with his metaphors and visual, descriptive, dark passions. I cannot praise this guy enough, and I'm so excited to have him on the Disc Dungeon talking about Music Curses to the 32 Club. Dun, dun, dun. And we are super excited to have probably next week, episode 31, with a guest musician, Justin Escobar. He is talking about powerful voices. He has one of the most powerful voices I've heard in a while, and I'm telling you, the ladies are going to love him. He's got a soothing sort mixed with the team of audios that brings out the amazing song, You and I. And that song is available on all of your listening choices and download favorites. Hey, guess what? Let's go dove diving. Let's get into those album highlights. 3 songs that I loved in her poetry-styled album of Hunger, an album which is a tribute to her late friend Jeff Buckley, whom we have spoken about in the Disc Dungeon before. Brenda Kahn's voice is very distinctive. It doesn't fall into the realm of copy of a lot of the singers that you may remember from the 90s, like Dolores O'Riordan or Sarah McLachlan. These folks have dominated the 90s, early 2000s, and a lot of artists that were coming up around that time kind of resembled and emulated those guys from the 90s, early 2000s, and Brenda Kahn is just on an island of her own. I love her voice. It's the standout thing on this checkout that I did on Hunger album. The song Hunger was probably one of my favorites. It's got such a lovely intro with the cello that has a switch to a, acoustic guitar. It was really cool. It led me on the path to choosing the album to take this deep dove dive. This is a total heart-pulsing song. It's powerful. It seems jokey, but when you hear it fully, you'll be like, oh, there's a lot going on. Now, keep in mind, her friend Jeff Buckley died in a tragic swimming accident. Let me give you some of the lyrics. I'm going to go through the motions, so to speak, and read them. I'm not going to be singing. For those of you that tuned in to hear me sing, I apologize. My voice is kind of gnarly. I'm fighting this infection, and I'm at the tail end of it. Yesterday, it felt like there was a rock on my head that I couldn't remove, and now it's gone, thankfully. The power of modern medicine. Anyhow, I digress. Let's dive into these lyrics. Safety in your hunger, feeling through the dark. Safety in your hunger, my pet shark. Another day in paradise. Heaven's just the light that shows your vice. The dark coral castles in your heart. The radio is filled with voices that made mistakes and made their choices. I still believe you'll be coming home. You follow me around like a bad reputation. Did the whole universe let you down? You swallow justice through the sky to ask why not the preacher lie. Down daisies dancing at the moon. In the end of this song, and what I've been researching, she's wrote a note, a thank you to her friend. It's quite lovely. I'm going to read it to you. I would also like to thank my friend Jeff Buckley, who showed me how pure music could be, how to seek joy and embrace life, and dedicate this record to the memory of him. You can hear it a lot in this album. Her pain, so to speak, with losing her friend. I know how tough it was for me when I've lost friends in the past, especially during this pandemic. I've lost quite a bit, and it's surprising because we're so young. At least we think we're young and immortal, but it's not the way, and unfortunately, this is the reality of time. If there's something going around that can get you, it will, and you'll have to keep going on. This was a tough episode for me to do. A lot of emotions, a lot of difficulties recording this. This is my first soundboard that I'm using on the podcast at home, and I hope the sound comes out pretty good, and hopefully my voice will be healed next week when we bring you episode 31. I mean, it's going to sound great because episode 31 was recorded a while ago, but but when I do the next Dove Dive, I hope my voice will be all healed up. I'm going to be doing the Dove Dives more regularly. Now that I have this set up, I believe the sound will be better, and I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, let me get back into this, and sorry for the digression. There is a wonder about artists who could have been even greater than we've even put our perception of their greatness. That idolized sort where everyone young has a poster of someone young in their walls and lockers, moved spirits by artists whom are locked in a fountain of youth, so to speak, as they are spirits despite our hope that they are resting softly at home and they didn't lose their life to another plane. So much so that it's like an emotional gift. A gift to a friend in lyric and notes. This song is by far the best song on the album. Her voice really powers through this poetry, so to speak, despite it not being the breakout track off the album. The next song I want to dive into with you, my friends, is Queen of Distance. This is the fourth song on the album. I heard it, it caught my ear most because, similar to Hunger, it's got a really nice blend of string and cello. The two strings, the guitar and the cello combo is really an ear grabber, at least for me. If that's not your thing, I definitely recommend maybe listening to something else, but I noticed here that this album really doesn't have that much drums or drums at all. I tried to connect this type of music that you'll be hearing if you went into a coffee shop before the pandemic and had somebody up on set somewhere. She could do it all on her own. She's a money saver. But it works because it's another song that is dance alone. She reminds you of her stance, and she stumbles through the wreckage like a Harley Quinn of bliss, writes her name in every taxi, longing for the things she missed, steered by fortunes of her past life. As the strings meet across the vocals, you can hear the dismay of loss prominently here. The cello plays a darker bass tone and the guitar follows in stride, making this one of the more sadder tracks on the album. But I absolutely enjoyed it. It's a lot because the way her voice mixes with the instruments, it just meant so much. It just works so well. And I really dug it. And I think you will too. Hopefully you take a listen. Lastly, I'm going to round it out with Christopher Says. Now, this is the breakout album, this song on the album. It reminds me, every time I see the word or hear the name Christopher, I always think of my friend from college, who, when I went to college, they had these things called Scantrons, and you had to bubble in your name on every major test that we took. And my computer informations professor would always go, well, your name is going to be Christophe for the next couple of weeks because we don't have any proper Scantrons to get your entire name. So here you go, Christophe. Every time I hear that name, it just reminds me of that. Anyway, this song to me is a lingering encounter of a lover in a one-night stand. a type of lover who's trying to tell the person to leave. Oh, do you know love when do you know when you're in love? I think you do. I won't be needing you. The sun is shining gray, and I think you've done your best. Now get up and get dressed. Yeah, that's a harsh one. I mean, it's like, yeah, man, you should always know that even if the words are nice, they're still spelling out your exit permanently. Love is a strange game, and when you're hung up on someone but they do not reciprocate, this leaves a hole in your life and your heart, a painful numbness that just lingers. We may, many times, try to find ways to fill that, but in some cases, we just meet a mirror, a person facing the same emptiness who can't figure out and can't spell out goodbye, and they can't fill it every time they try. So they only need you for a time, and then they move on in the hope to change the outcome, but you're not the one. That has all just kept rambling a circle of chaos and hopelessness. You know, you meet someone, you hit it off, and you bring them back home, and yeah, nope, this isn't it. I'm not healed. This didn't do anything for me. All right. I won't be needing you. The sun is shining gray, and I think you've done your best. Now get up and get dressed. It's very sweet. There's a sweet way to say it, but nevertheless, it's chaotic and a goodbye that's kind of harsh and bitter. But it's rather upbeat for such a rough and tumble moment of life. Yeah, man, you should always know, even if the words are nice, they still might be spelling out your exit permanently. We call it ghosting now, but love is a strange game. When you're hung up on someone and they don't reciprocate, or, you know, if they've parted this mortal coil, it leaves a hole in your life and in your heart, a painful numbness that just lingers. Many times we try to find ways to fill it. Sometimes we end up meeting up with a mirror. A mirror meaning a person facing that same emptiness that can't figure out why and only needs you for a time, then moves on in the hope to change the outcome. But alas, you are not the one. That is all just maintained a rambling circle of chaos and hopelessness. Each time, both hearts hurt further, as the void is never filled and the countless comparisons of the previous love take on imagery than the chance to make a new pair from someone that's with you now. So, it's a stop and stare to a farewell. Never any real closure, as the person you are trying to replace is irreplaceable, at least in your mind. This song is rough. I mean, I never partaked in any type of coitus such as that. It's not my style. I like to know people, you know what I mean? I can understand when you live in that fast life that these type of things happen, and when you have a void of someone that's passed or someone that you really put yourself into, it's kind of hard to really get that true partnering. Well, that brings us to the end, my friends. I want to give a special thanks to Loren Dixon for this introduction to Brenda Kahn. And next week, my aunt, Yvette, puts me on to Suite for Flute and Jazz Piano. This is an album by Jean-Pierre Rampal and Claude Rolling, and it's jazz. So it's going to be nice to take a break from a lot of this folk music. A couple of people put me on the folk stuff, so it's nice to, I mean, there was V&V Nation, that was great. And other than V&V Nation, this is like, okay, I'm not a folk podcast, guys. You can put me on other things, so I appreciate it. This is family, so it's going to be a nice long episode. Friends, if you want to put me onto a record that you really like, you've got Instagram at Disc Dungeon, you've got Twitter at Disc Dungeon, Facebook at Disc Dungeon, and then Patreon. Yeah, we got Patreon. We can both do a dive into someone that you like. Having Julian with me to do the same sort would be better because he knows how to record better than I do on this thing. Anyway, let me know what you think of the episode by subscribing to the podcast, liking the podcast, and rating us on Apple Podcasts. I'd appreciate it. And if you could share it with your friends, that would mean the world to me. And if you have extra disposable income and want to be a Patreon supporter, check us out. It's the To Be Seen Mastery. And we have a special Dive Disc Dungeon tier. And you get a whole bunch of stuff. You get like magnets. You get a thumbs up for me, a hug. No, for real. You get to choose what we will be putting on the Disc Dungeon and the Dove Dive, and we'll take your input. So there's a lot of opportunity there for you to shape the whole world here, and we can have a lot of fun. So I am going to end this. I hope you have a great day, and thanks for listening. Please subscribe if you haven't. Again, share with your friends, and I will dive into it pretty soon.